Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And welcome to the Beyond the Surface podcast. I am Snezondo.
And I'm Sissy Paul. And this is the first episode.
Yes, of many.
I'm excited
I'm
nervous.
I'm very nervous. Yeah, but let's see how this goes. We are recording and shooting at the 132 Art Gallery in Saturn, which is the home of Beyond the Surface for season 1.
Yeah.
Gorgeous place, lots of artwork to see. So guys, please come through and check it out. They are also on Instagram at 132 Art Gallery, and we'll keep you posted on any events that they may be hosting, of any artists that they may be showcasing. So yeah, be on the lookout for that as well.
Awesome. So, I guess we need to get started
Get
with
right
the
into
topic.
Let's go.
So what are we talking about today?
I think what we're talking about today is just the past year. Lockdown, corona, working from home, all of the above.
Yeah.
And the complexities thereof. Because I'm sure there's been many.
A lot.
Yes.
For me, I think. I guess to get started, might as well, I'm going to incorporate that as like an intro to like a lot of things, including us, so that you all get to know us, and we're all acquainted. So the past year, I guess, for me to start the conversation, I was like, man, it's been a year, literally.
And more. Ifilim. As others would say, a movie, ifilim.
It hasn't been great, I won't lie.
Really?
No, I think because I was dealing with a lot. I was expecting 2020 to be something like of a year.
Yes.
And it turned out to be the complete opposite.
Yes, I can agree to that, because I think
Yeah.
I stepped into 2020 being like 2020 vision. Like, this is the year of clarity. This is the year of movement. This is the year of progression. And I think, although that did occur, I guess it wasn't in the way that I had expected it
Yeah.
to occur. And I think maybe that overall takeaway of 2020 was that it was a year of great expectation.
Yeah.
However, it didn't pan out the way that I had seen it. But there was a lot that happened and a lot that I grew from, just not the way that I had envisioned. And I think that was a great lesson to take overall.
Yeah.
But I think we can just sort of go into depth into our experiences, challenges, and where we see 2021 going. Because this is, just to let everybody know, this is a thing that we've been talking about starting this podcast and for a very long time. And I think we've been wanting to do something together for a very long time. And I think 2020 was part of that process.
Yeah.
But hey, delayed but not denied. Here we are.
Look at us now. Look at us now. I think for me, the beginning of it all, it was like the shift from, working at the office and then suddenly having to move from home. Me, it was like, okay, fine, adjust and adapt. And I think everyone at that time was like on the mindset, okay, this is for a few days, if not in a few weeks. And then, life is going to go back to normal. Little did we know.
And I think for me, I remember when the president had the first ever, what we call now a family meeting. I was, in Joburg by myself. And I remember watching the news and immediately phoning my family and saying, guys, I'm packing my bags. I am coming home. Because I knew that being by myself was not an option. Knowing and dealing with, my own mental health, I knew that was not going to be a healthy space for me. I loved my alone time. I loved being alone, but I think more than that, my health, took precedence. And I'm glad I did that, because I think family time was really what I needed. And I don't think I'm going to spend as much time with my family again in my big age. So I think looking at it from that perspective, it was a lot of family time, and it was exactly what I needed, in that season, because I don't think I'm going to experience it again in that way. So that was a great takeaway. That family is and always will be something that I can lean on, but it was just really nice to treasure those moments and be with my family. at my big age.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I'm ever going to experience it in that way again.
True.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was literally like I had no choice. Like I had to be around,
Yes.
like work because of the work that I do. But it was a lot of time in solitude, actually, you know, by myself. And I had good opportunity just to reflect about my life, what I want. It was a very quiet. And I think a lot of people can attest to the loneliness they
Yes.
felt. And I think that's why a lot of people were like, just, you know, it was stressful. And, you know, I lost a colleague due to COVID, and like that shifted a lot.
Yeah.
You know, because like you never think, you know, I mean, I work in a very close-knit environment
Yeah.
like, with my colleagues, and so when that happened, like I was telling someone else, like you never imagine like your colleagues dying.
Yeah.
Like they leave and they go through and to
Their
like
own life things.
Yeah, and they move on to other, you know, stages of their lives. But like to lose and having to grieve a colleague was like very, very strenuous on me,
Yeah.
and like just not being able to move around a lot. But I mean, I still had support. My friends were around, my family was around. I could still, you know, connect with people. But like in that moment, I was really like feeling very much alone.
Yeah. And I think just on that point, I think loss and grieving
Yeah.
in the time of COVID
Yeah.
is just a very weird thing, you know. And I lost my grandmother, you know, during that during COVID, and it's also just like the send off that you want to give your loved ones is not the same. The way that you process grief is not the same, because
No.
the way that we've had to structure support is not the same,
Same.
because people can't be there physically for
Yeah.
you, and the way that I've had to understand support is also quite different, because it's easy for me to say, guys, you know, I've lost someone very important in my life. Where are you all? You know, as a person, you also have to be cognizant of the fact that, listen,
Yeah.
there is a new world order. There is a lot that is happening in the world. And so the way that I choose to receive support and the way that people give support, I think was something that I continually had to learn. And that's just not with loss. I think it's just with in friendships and in
Yeah.
relationships, because we could not be as present as
And the sense of togetherness, it was like
Exactly.
stripped away completely. Literally, like there was like, you know, there was like no one.
And I think for me that highlighted the importance of community. Just think about church. I think we took the gathering of the saints very lightly, and I think for me Corona highlighted the importance of having people around you. Yes, we are in the same city and I don't drive to see you, but during Corona I wanted to drive to see you. During Corona, a phone call was not enough.
Like-
During Corona, I wanted to do all the
Things that you took for granted,
Yes.
and all of a sudden, those things were not allowed.
Yes.
It was a lot of like to deal with mentally, and like a lot of requirement, you know, in terms of like a mind shift.
Yes.
And mental strength as well.
I mean, I think if you think about it, like, you know, fine, there's people that you don't see all the time, right? You see them at a wedding, you see them at a funeral, or, you know, any other family Thanksgiving gathering or whatever, or a friend's birthday. But in this instance, it's like you can't even use those moments for that catch up.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us live for the moments of catch up at a family event, at a, you know, family gathering or whatever. And now we didn't have that. And so it's like those moments that you're counting on, even that
Yeah.
is now completely stripped down to the bare minimum. And I think that was also just something that was a bit hard to process, because you don't expect it.
And it took a toll also on me mentally. And I always, you know, am grateful for having a lot of like, I would say, good mental strength.
Yeah,
But like
yeah,
even
you do.
Yeah,
and
even
you're able to reason.
Yeah.
And I think it was like,
it was a shock to my system, I won't lie, to a point where I remember we had this conversation, I think, you know, deep into lockdown. It was like, you know, towards the end of the year last year. And I was like, I think maybe I really need to now consider like speaking to someone professionally.
yeah.
Like, because I think a lot had been happening,
grief.
and I wasn't struggling to
Yeah.
process it. Because like my natural instinct was like, okay, this is the new way to live now, so get over it,
Yeah.
figure out a way
Move
to
on.
cope and whatever. But it wasn't working.
Yeah.
It wasn't working. Like I would have anxiety. I remember the first time I had first anxiety, I was like, what is
Your
going
first
on?
panic attack.
I couldn't believe it, because I had never experienced
Experienced
that
it.
before. And and it was just a shock to my body.
Yeah.
Like not being able to sleep normally. Sleeping patterns were ruined.
Changed.
I was tired, lethargic, and it was just a lot.
Yeah.
So I literally was like, okay, it's time for me to consider, starting therapy.
Yeah.
And I think that was the best decision I made.
I think for me, like I said, like in the beginning, making that phone call to my family and saying, I'm packing my bags. While there is this window, I'm coming home, was just coming from a place of, I know I've struggled with mental health and mental illness, and I didn't want to be alone in that time. In a time where going to the shop, you don't trust anybody, that was not a risk that I was going to take for my mental health. And I think even being at home, I continued, with the therapy, just even once a month. I think for me it was a great outlet. And I think if anything, it's highlighted that as much as you can be fine, it's very important to sort of keep some of those open channels with regards to therapy and communication with people, to just offload. Because I think 2020 was a year that we carried it all. And for me, there had to be a point of release.
Yeah.
And I think it's very difficult to release when we're all going through stuff, because people, you're not the only one in hell here. Like, we are all burning, and it's not easy to offload.
Yeah.
And so I was very cognizant of the fact that I have to take care of myself, so that I can also show up for others, during this time.
And that was a great lesson for me too.
Yeah.
To realize that, I mean, at the end of the day, really, it actually, I just realized that looking after yourself is really important.
Yes.
And nothing trumps that. I think I was maybe taking or wasn't like really cognizant of the fact that my health is important. And I think seeing a lot of people getting sick, seeing a lot of people dying, whether, not close, but like hearing of so much death.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my gosh, I really need to prioritize my health in all its aspects.
Yeah.
Mental, physical, and all that stuff. And I also I think that time alone, it was a time that I needed for a lot of perspective about certain things, and dealing with other personal things that have been occupying my mind, that I thought, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think even towards when I then decided to go to therapy, I think it was so good to confront certain things that I thought were they were gone. But I realized that we're actually being triggered.
Gotta go
deep.
deep.
By spending time alone.
Yeah.
By seeing all of this grief around me, and just not being able to connect with people. Because also another thing is a lot of the socializing that we were doing pre-lockdown. I think I was reading a post about we use certain things in life as a distraction. Yeah. So you don't confront certain things that you're dealing with. Yeah. And so that time, I guess, in a good and a bad way, was really beneficial to me in terms of just confronting myself and just ironing out certain things. And I think I'll never be the same again. I think something about me has been altered, hopefully for the good. I've just been processing life in a different way.
Yeah, and I can agree to that. I think it was a time of just great introspection, and a time of really just looking into oneself. And it's tough because I think sometimes you look at yourself and you realize there's a lot of ugly going on, and you cannot run away from it. Yeah. And it's easy to do life when you're triggered by people and you react to people. How do you react to yourself?
Oh, because that's good.
Now you're stuck with you.
That's good.
And I think those inner groanings and inner rumblings that we felt, it was a time to deal with them. Yeah. It was a time to deal with the insecurity. It was a time to deal with the anger issues that you might have had. It was a time to deal with the loss and the disappointment that you might have felt. And not easy at all. Yeah. But this was a time to deal with all of that stuff. And I think it was a time to really also just, I think, like you said, learn to love oneself.
Yeah. Prioritize.
And learn to take care of oneself, because I think it was the only time that we got to realize, at the end of the day, you're also all you've got. And so you have to
That's so
give
true.
yourself a shot.
That's so true.
At this life thing. Because you're all you've got.
Yeah.
Yes, we have family, we have friends, we have community, but at the end of the day, you yourself are also all you have. And it's important that you deal with you.
Yeah.
I think 2020 showed me that, we're so good at pointing the finger and looking at the other person. But this was a time where I saw, actually, no. I'm the one that's insecure. I'm the one that has the anger issue. I'm the one that needs to learn to communicate effectively. It's very easy to tell people to communicate until you have to actually understand how you feel and communicate that. And that is not an easy process, by any means. It's not easy to look into yourself and to see the imperfections for really what they are.
True.
And to realize that actually you are the one that projects. You are part of the problem, And I think that was something that I also really learned, that they have toxic traits.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to call people toxic. It's very easy to cut people and to do all that stuff. But sometimes you're the problem.
True.
And in you being the problem, it's a lot of stuff that's happened to you that you now have to deal with. And I think the best part of it was recognizing what the issues were and the fact that there's grace for them, one, and two, that there is a way out of that. So I think it was a beautiful, I think, as tough as it was, I think that was the beauty in it.
True.
As well.
I felt the same as well. I mean, I think I also learned to just pay attention also
To you.
to myself, right? And be cognizant of my behavior, things that I say, and where they come from. I think it speaks to self-awareness more in a deeper level, not just saying I know who I am, or this is how I am, I know myself. It's kind of really being very, not necessarily how else the word I would use. It's really just being, I guess, introspection. It is it's through everything, or reflecting on things that trigger you. Yes. And not only triggers, but how you respond to things, how you react. And being mindful of yourself and your surroundings. And that, I will say, I've learned how to, I try to take better care of myself.
And I think for me, it's also been a process of realizing, I think you mentioned the reaction, and I think I had to realize that I'm reactive. Reactive in the way that I make decisions, reactive in the way that I respond, in terms of communication, and reactive in the way that I look at my life sometimes, just because of an instance. And I think in 2020, how else do you react to that year?
That's so true.
You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where I had to be like, okay, the year is saying no. The year to me is saying no, but how do I react to that? How do I show up in that? And I think it took, I think it took 2021 this year for me to be able to look back and say, you know what, there was a lot that happened. But I also always have to choose whatever cards I'm dealt with, how do I handle them?
How do you respond?
And I think that's the thing, right? It's about response and not reaction.
There we go.
And I think I'm still battling with that, but I think it's a positive, and it's something that I can say, you know what, I grew from certain things, and that's it's been a joy. And I think I was thinking about this, if there's one thing that Corona also incited in me, is that I have trust issues.
Oh, really?
Yes. I remember people telling me, I got COVID. And I'm like, my first question was, Utolib, it's not the right question to ask. But where you been? Who you been with? What you been doing? What were you doing? And obviously, definitely there are instances, guys, where it was real. And I'm not taking away from the depth of COVID, or the depth of the damage that it caused and to families and the disappointment that took. I'm just on a lighter note, please.
Yeah. I think for me, it was more the fear and paranoia. I think for months I was just
Yeah.
going around like ducking
Literally,
and diving.
the first
and
few months.
It wasn't normal.
The first few months of COVID, the only people who went and got groceries were my dad and my brother, because I was like, I am not going anywhere. I am not touching anything, and I will not be seen by anyone, because there were those long queues
Yeah.
to get food, and I was just, I'm not trying to die.
It was.
Every man for himself syndrome literally
Literally.
kicked in. And I was like, Dad, you are the provider of this family. You shall go forth and you shall provide.
Risk your life.
No, and I think, that's just also just trust issues, because I'm just
Yeah.
like, normally you stand in a queue, someone touches you, you don't mind. Like, it's just a bump. These
Yeah.
days,
It's like,
touch
don't come
me.
closer. 2-meter distance, please.
And I think I'm still a bit like that. I think
Yeah.
that trust also
I
is
don't
just...
think, speaking of that, I don't think it's actually going forward. I mean, now that it seems like we're crawling into the new normal, I think the habits that we were doing pre-COVID, some of them were not hygienic. I mean,
Personal space is a real
it's-
thing, and
it's very important.
keep your distance.
Like, seriously.
Okay? Keep your distance.
The shaking of hands, I don't know how you say. I'm glad that's not a thing anymore. I mean, it's just touching people's palms and sweats. And
Yes.
No, thank you.
And I think it's one of those things where when you're invited to my space and you're not
Yeah.
going to intrude. I think,
Yeah.
listen, personally, I'm not a hugger. And I think that thing of people just hugging you, I was like, well, and I'm glad that, that
That's
now,
gone.
Yeah, that now is something that I have to deal with people I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And even with people that you know, like even with distant family, distant cousins, it ain't a thing because, yay.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that personal space, personal hygiene, definitely,
It's a
part of
thing.
my trust issues. Part of my trust issues, because I think it's something that we went with because, like, I guess if you're not that friendly, or it was viewed as you not being friendly,
Yeah.
and it was viewed as you being stuck up, and now it's like, no, actually, personal space, personal boundary, 1 meter at least.
It is very important.
Yeah.
It's very important. And I think also it's just fostered a new culture of relating,
Yes.
right? And I think we're still struggling though, because we're so used to, socializing.
Yeah.
But I think that the distance thing and the personal space thing, I think it has really actually shown me that I think we really were overboard.
Yeah.
Like hygiene wise also. So I'm very happy of the new consciousness in terms of like touching
Hygiene.
surfaces, touching each other, yourself even.
Sanitizing.
Exactly.
Because
Like,
before
who
you
would've
do anything, wash your hands. I mean, like, I know we've all been told to wash our hands, but I mean, how many people actually did that? I don't know how many times I've been to the bathroom and seen people walk out,
thought- literally.
no hands washed. I mean, not even running your hands down the water. Like, I mean, the bare minimum. And so I think now that slowly
Yeah.
it's been forced on us. And I think people have come to grips with the fact that let's just try keep clean, not for yourself, but for the next person.
So important.
Yeah.
And I mean, speaking of that, like now that we're, trying to sort out like vaccine issues and like life is kind of getting into normal, I was interested, it's like, how are you adjusting from that intense level of like lockdown, now moving into back to like what was kind of like the norm before COVID, that transition?
I think, you know what? I think I expected myself to transition quicker because I craved a certain level of community
Yeah.
and, that type of relation. But I think I've actually really been slow. I have really been slow at getting back into socializing and hanging out with friends or in groups. I think it's been a thing of I'm also just catching up with my own life, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I've had to catch up with how I'm working again because I think I've slowly sort of started going back into the office. So that's been a slow transition. And I think to be quite honest, the mall is a place I don't even go to anymore because lockdown introduced me to online shopping, and I am fine with that. I am happy with that. And I don't know, I really have been slow at really just getting back into the swing of
Life as you knew before.
yeah. And
That's
I mean,
true.
I don't know if that's such a bad thing. I think if there's one thing that I have been doing is also communicating that to the people that I love.
Yeah.
Like, guys, this is taking me some time. I am readjusting, and a lot of things have happened in my life.
Yeah.
And I have requested that space. And I think that's it's important to also, as much as we're all going back to normal, to not expect people to move at the speed that you are, but be cognizant of the fact that this is taking time for everybody. So it hasn't happened as quick as I would have expected.
I think for me, it's like I just had to try to find like the middle ground between what like was normal and the kind of like where we are like now, because I mean I don't think things will ever go back the same as it used to.
I don't think they will.
And I also want to give myself an opportunity to adjust to that difference. So I mean things like being out and about, I mean I didn't do much of that besides meeting up with a friend or two of them, but I've realized I've actually become even more antisocial.
I can agree to that. I think for me it's one of those things where my circle was small, but I'm not doing like big friendship groups, invite everybody, let's all hang out. That's not my go-to. If anything, I'm really interested in one-on-ones, and I think COVID helped that, to foster deeper relation and for me to really know, what's happening in your life, where you at for real. Because I think in meeting in big groups, it's very surface level and nobody really gets deep, and people leave and then you wonder, oh, I didn't know you were struggling with X. I didn't know that you had this issue. I didn't know you were going for therapy. So I think it's helped me to be very intentional. I think that's the word, with my friendships and how I communicate in them. Do I want to still go to a big birthday party? Yes.
Once in a while.
Yeah, those things are good. But
yeah.
I think also just in my transition in life in general, I think my circle has gotten smaller and has also been a work of being more and more intentional. Just as I transition into an adult, and I think there's just a lot of things happening at once, right?
Yeah.
It's this move from COVID to now we're sort of easing things off, and it's also the move into like, okay, my life is also just transitioning. And my life is not transitioning only because of COVID, but just because it has to transition. And I think that's the hard part also to juggle. It's like, I can't say life is hard because of COVID. Life is also hard because I am growing, And it's that thing of like, what causes what.
Yeah.
And I've had to also just realize, no, you're moving into a different phase of your life, and your friendships are going to change, your relationships are going to change, work is going to change, just how you view life is going to change. And I mean, COVID hasn't helped facilitate that in a way, but transition is transition. COVID or no COVID,
it is what it is. That's true. And I think speaking about like no, seriously, those transitions and like certain relationships, I think I've just gotten to a point where I'm like just understanding generally that the impact of COVID has been different for everyone, and everyone is dealing with it as best as they know how. And so some relationships I've just, maybe it's a me thing. I'm just like, okay, I mean, it is what it is.
This is a topic for discussion
on another,
on its own.